Well, there's certainly no question that's in an increasingly challenging and complex retail landscape, driven now, of course, by all of the requirements around omni-channel commerce and e-fulfillment that's just making life very, very challenging, but at the same time very interesting for retailers. So we wanted to get a sense of really what was driving some of this complexity and maybe what some of the past to take some of that complexity out and have omni-channel success in the retail world. And there's no one better to talk about this today than my good friend Karin Bursa. She is a VP of Marketing down at Logility. She's coming to us from the company's headquarters in the Atlanta region in this Supply Chain Thought Leaders video. Karin, it's great to have you again here on the Supply Chain Television channel.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here.
Okay, we know obviously that omni-channel is driving so much of the market today, and that's just driving so much complexity from the world we knew even just 5 years ago. What is sort of your take on these challenges and the tremendous complexity that retailers somehow have to be able to get their arms around to have success in this new world?
Absolutely. Dan, there's, as you said, no question that retail is much more complex today than it was just 5 years ago. At the same time, consumers are much more demanding. Consumers don't shop anymore. They want to engage, and they engage on their phones. They engage by catalog, online, and coming into the retail location. And as retailers, we just haven't made the transition to thinking about our inventory as one pool of inventory that can serve the needs of the omni-channel or a multi-channel business. Deloitte did a research study recently that said that out of stocks are costing retailers over $100 billion a year in sales. That's billion with a B. That's a lot of opportunity to position our inventory much more effectively.
Well, very interesting, and I guess my quick follow-up is, people, I think, to a large extent understand the challenges. The question is what to do about it, and this is, people are searching for answers. What do you see at sort of a high level or generic level? I mean, what can retailers do to tackle the problems that you just identified?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question there's plenty of opportunity to improve and to serve customers better, to give them a consistent brand experience. The biggest challenge that I see is retailers really marrying multiple planning processes in their business. They need to bring together the merchandise financial planning capabilities of what they plan for each and every channel to contribute, each and every store to contribute from not just a revenue but a profitability perspective. They need to bring those financial plans in alignment with the actual sourcing and production and allocation plans across their business. So we can look at both long-term supply chain needs for the business right down to what those daily allocation or replenishment needs are at each retail location. Lots of opportunity to do that, giving us much more flexibility in how we utilize the inventory that's available, how we engage with customers, and how we really achieve near real-time visibility of the merchandise that's in our network. And the technology is there. There was a recent study that was done by Boston Retail Partners in this area of merchandise planning and financial planning for the businesses as well as allocation. And what they found is that 25% of retailers today are using systems for cross-channel planning. So only 25% are leveraging one platform to plan across all of their channels. My question to you is, what are the other 75% doing? Research shows they're using spreadsheets, and I just don't think that you can trust your supply chain to spreadsheets. We're far, far too complex for that in today's marketplace.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I suspect the other 75% are doing that. I got a couple quick points to what you just said there, Karin. First off, what you described there in terms of what retailers need to go to sounds something not too far away from sales, inventory, and operations planning that we've seen on the manufacturing side for a long time. Do you see retailers moving down that path, even if they call it by some different name?
Yeah, that's great insight, Dan, because I think in reality, that's absolutely the direction that they're moving in. Many retailers have not adopted the terminology of PSYOP or S&OP yet, but I think it's coming. I think looking at their business comprehensively and bringing together the financial planning aspects with the merchandise and allocation aspects and the sourcing and distribution are huge opportunity. And in fact, in retail, we see real opportunity around bringing together really a push model with a pull model. And what I mean by that is if you're demand driven, if you look at your forecasting and inventory needs and do that from a demand driven perspective, you can push or position that inventory at the distribution centers that are most likely to serve consumer demand. And then if you think about pull-based replenishment, pull-based demand, that's really where allocation comes into play, where you want the ability to pull your inventory to the point where the consumer is most likely to engage with you. And you really need to marry these strategies together. The demand-driven push approach and looking at those longer-term planning horizons with the actual pull perspective or pull-driven allocation and replenishment plans for your business. This is really going to give you the biggest benefit, and I guarantee you it's something that cannot be managed in spreadsheets. You need a comprehensive planning solution in place that brings all of those elements together.
Yeah, and that was Karin, the second point I was going to make was that, usually in most areas of supply chain or business generally, it's kind of, process first and then the technology and the people and, all that. And but in this omni-channel world, I'm just, struck repeatedly, and I've heard retailers say the same thing, that this is so much of a technology-driven issue because either there's certain things like managing one pool of inventory and being able to allocate across channels. It's like I can either do that or I can't. It's like I can either support order online and pick up in store or I can't. And so more so than any kind of issue or challenge I've seen in my 20 odd years in the supply chain, this one is more connected at the hip to technology capabilities than almost any problem I've ever seen.
I agree with you, Dan. You're spot on in your observations. And, the reality is the technology is available. Technology is proven. And it can significantly reduce the risk for your business. We've got retailers who today are looking at each of these channels independently. They may speak omni-channel, but they're living multiple supply chains that are dedicated to retail or dedicated to catalog business or dedicated to their e-commerce business. What they need to do is look holistically at their ability to serve consumers and look at that pool of merchandise and plan that pool of merchandise comprehensively so that each of those channels have the opportunity to really meet their financial goals for the business.
Okay, Karin, very good. Well, it's kind of been implied in some of your comments here already, but I know you've been up to a lot of stuff down there at Logility in terms of supporting these kind of capabilities, including an acquisition earlier this year. Why don't you give us an update on what Logility is doing to help address this retail complexity and the omni-channel challenge?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Well, Logility has served the retail sector for decades. But earlier this year, we made an acquisition of MID Retail. And what that allows us to do is take the traditional strengths of Logility, which are in the area of forecasting, inventory optimization, supply and distribution management, sales and operations planning, and marry that in one solution set with some of those traditional merchandise financial planning, assortment planning, and allocation capabilities that are so necessary for that last mile, for the presentation of that merchandise at the point of interaction with the consumers. So now Logility offers a full suite of capabilities that can really take you from sourcing to distribution right to your consumer. And we think that's a real advantage in the marketplace. We're serving retailers that have thousands of retail locations. They're looking at very high volume replenishment on an evening basis where they may be replenishing 50 million line items or 50 million orders out to retail locations and need to do that very cost effectively and allow their people to interact and problem solve when necessary, but take that proven optimization capability and automate as much of that, make it rules-based as possible. Move away from those spreadsheets and really allow your team to use their merchandise expertise, to use their planning expertise to solve reality of making the consumer happy and having a consistent interaction from a consumer experience.
Okay, Karin, very good. Well, as usual, you've hit the nail on the head here in terms of what's going on out there, and I think what the retailers need to do. As always, appreciate your sharing your thoughts and insights with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dan. But one point I'd like to make is there's a lot of opportunity for retailers. They just need to stop long enough to catch their breath and think holistically about what's happening in the supply chain, what's happening at retail, and marry those plans together. And you can do it. The technology is available. You get this right, it's going to change your profitability picture. It's going to change your relationship with your consumers.
Well said, Karin. Thanks so much again.
Thanks so much.